Hello everyone, welcome to the Big Cat Aethercast, our very first episode.
You wake me up from my room in the sandstone for this?
Oh hush. Hello everyone, my name is Rei. I go by Rei'tan on Final Fantasy XIV.
And I am Leo Force. I go by Roaring Smite in the Lamia server on Final Fantasy XIV.
And I'm an Excalibur. This is our inaugural episode of this podcast series, and basically what this series is going to be about is I've been a long-time fan of Final Fantasy XIV ever since the pandemic started, pretty much.
I think a lot of people can take that claim.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. But it's easily taken up a huge portion of my life now.
Can you do the meme?
What meme?
You know the meme.
Oh, the award-winning Final Fantasy XIV free trial complete with... I can't do the whole thing. Damn it. I loved it. But you know what I mean. Anyway, this podcast is all about me guiding Leo over here through Final Fantasy XIV because I've beaten the game. I've gotten to endgame content. I have done all the raids. I have done all the side stories pretty much.
And he's basically trying to recruit me so that way he has someone else to do the endgame content with.
Pretty much. I will go ahead and give a forewarning. My friend Leo here is not going in completely blind.
I've been exposed to too much memery. I've been exposed to too many crossovers. I've even been exposed to a comic where a dark potato tries to hit on Grahatia.
Okay.
That is more or less the extent of my pre-awareness. I don't know too many events. I know certain character costumes that are going to appear in the future.
Yes, you've seen you've seen Ishtola in her dark robes, and you've seen Manhor Urianje.
And I have seen a burn so horrific that even Ifrit says that was a bit too much.
Yes.
That's more or less my knowledge of certain Final Fantasy XIV events. Otherwise, I'm basically going in blind.
Yes. And for the record, this podcast is not going to be like weekly or monthly, because both of us have lives outside of this. It is going to happen whenever Leo here gets done with a segment of Final Fantasy XIV that I think is good enough to stop and discuss about.
Which basically means every numbered update and post-content update.
Yes. So for this episode, we're talking about 2.0. All of A Realm Reborn, from entering in...
starting a fresh character up until...
the Ultima Weapon.
The Ultima Weapon, correct.
Yes. That is as far as I know you have done.
Yes.
So I guess with that out of the way, first off, I should probably ask, how familiar are you with Final Fantasy in general?
I know quite a few of the games. My general experience with Final Fantasy is 1, 2, 3, 4. I never did anything with 5 or 6. 7 I learned through osmosis thanks to the internet. 8 is surprisingly the one that I least like. And I say that's ironic because I liberally use Leon's lion hit symbol as my own. So people would ask me, "Are you a big fan of 8?" And I say, "No, I fucking hate it.
Yeah.
I just like the symbol." 9 was my first one that I ever really sunk my teeth into. 10 I kind of enjoy, although not as much as you do.
Yeah, fair enough.
Never touched 11 because I hated MMOs. 12 repulsed me in a way that I would be justified in hating 13.
Yeah.
I really didn't care about 14 when it came out, although I heard it was kind of okay after 2.0. And then 15 I watched my roommate in grad school play it a bunch of times over, or at least play it over, and there were some memes from there that I kind of enjoyed. And then 16 is actually probably the next one I will actually invest in, because it looks like it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, by the time this podcast comes out, either 16 will have come out, or it will be just a few days before it comes out.
Besides that, I enjoyed the Final Fantasy Tactics series the most.
Which is funny that you hate 12, considering Tactics is done place in Ivalice.
Right, well, because the thing is that I like the 12 setting, I hate the 12 story and some of the combat systems.
I don't blame you for that.
Like if it instead of it being about Van and Penelope, if it was about Bash and his Amazonian bunny girlfriend, we would be having a very different conversation.
Oh yeah, knowing your taste, that would compose about at least 2/3 of your personality.
Okay, wow, thanks. I was going to say, besides that, I enjoy the Tactics series a lot, specifically the original Tactics and Tactics Advanced. Tactics 2 is okay as a technical matter. The the story itself is trash.
And I agree with you there.
Never got into Dissidia because I did not have a Vita or a PSP. And then same thing with Crisis Core or any of the extended FF7 stuff until we got Remake. And I think that's it. The only other thing that I kind of enjoyed was Energize. If you ever remember that one, that was the Enix fighting game, because this was old enough that it was back when Square Enix were still two separate companies.
God, we're old.
And it had Tifa, Cloud, Red 13, Vincent, and I think Sephiroth as hidden characters.
Yeah, I don't recall that at all, but...
the Chocobo Racing series when it was on PlayStation, and not the remake that's hot garbage.
Oh, no, not GP, that came out recently.
Yeah, GP is hot garbage. And then the music minigames.
Okay, the Theatrhythm.
The Theatrhythm, thank you.
Yeah.
That's basically the extent. That is quite a bit, but it is a lot more shallow than I would say is for the traditional Final Fantasy fan. For
the most part, I've experienced in one way or another every single mainline Final Fantasy game. My favorites are 10, 9, and 14 currently, although I have been enjoying the 7 remake, even though I did not like the original, mainly because I couldn't get past the popsicle stick figures. Mm-hmm. I'd say, other than those, my favorite is probably 4. That's one of my favorites.
4 has a lot of length to it, I think, but I think the only thing I haven't... I've played the original. I have not done any of the after-year shit.
No, don't do the after-year shit. The after-year shit is hot garbage.
But I need the lore.
Oh, no, you don't, because it actively, retroactively makes things worse.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, so don't even bother.
Okay.
Anyway, with that out of the way, we're here to talk about Final Fantasy XIV, the giant award-winning MMO.
Okay. Let me ask you, have you ever played an MMO prior to 14?
No, and in fact, I actively detested this MMO because my ex was so obsessed with this game that he would never bother paying attention to me.
So, how did it feel like going to the thing that you hated?
It was a bit of a love-hate relationship. I had heard so much about Shadowbringers when it was coming out, and this was, again, during the big sticky when everyone was doing this, and I had so many friends and so many people that were getting into this and loving it so much, and I was like, you know what, fuck it. I'll give it a try. And it was a slow go for me. I did the free trial at the time, and I started off as a Mikote, and then once I was like, okay, you've won me over, I'll get the full patch, I went to Hrothgar immediately, because that species was immediately...
Was already out by then.
Was already out by then, and was what was drawing me to the game in general, because, yeah,
Because you're furry trash, like I am.
Yes, we are both hot furry trash. If you couldn't tell by the fucking title card that has 2 Hrothgars posing in this, I really hope that the title card doesn't draw people away from this.
It shouldn't, and if not, we can glamour it up to different incarnations of our characters.
Yeah, maybe I can get an artist to draw different versions of us, but until then...
I wonder what Roaring Smite would look like as a Lalafell.
You are not going to become a little gremlin shit. I will personally punt you in the next week.
You mean I already am not?
Look, I'll kick your ass any day of the week. If you actually actively become a Lalafell, I will actually fist smack you. I don't care if you're wearing a watch. I will smack you. Yes, if you couldn't tell, I despise the Lalafells. Although that's probably not a controversial statement.
Not entirely, but it depends on what server you're in.
Yeah. Ugh. But anyway, I have a series of questions for Leo here to talk about his experience through 2.0, and we might as well go ahead and get into them. So, first off, what town did you start in, and what race did you choose at first, since you didn't have Hrothgar from the start?
Right, I also did the free trial when, during COVID, my progression through the game was much longer. I kind of played it on and off, because at first I was doing this through my PC, so my rig wasn't the best until I upgraded it maybe a year later. and then I could actually play on it pretty decently. To answer the immediate question, I started in Ul'dah, and I was a Rogadin, because that was the closest thing to a buff race that I could pick. So
yeah, fair
I did
enough.
Rogadin, and my starting class was Gladiator.
Okay, you started with Gladiator. I started as a Mikote in Gridania, and I chose to be a Lancer and Dragoon. Okay, and so you said you started off as Gladiator, so what other jobs have interested you so far?
So far, I have done... I have leveled up Monk and Paladin to 50, and then I have side-leveled Black Mage as far as my main classes. My discipline of War and Discipline of Magic. Discipline of Land, I've only done minor, but I've got that up sufficiently high, I think like mid to late 40s. And then...
For Crafter?
Disciplines of Hand, I have done Blacksmith, Armor, Weaver, and Culinarian.
Okay.
And I think those are all about high 10s, low 20s.
Okay. And for the record, I've maxed out Miner, Botanist, and I've maxed out all the crafting classes because I'm weird that way.
And what about your main classes?
My main classes, I started off as a Dragoon. Once Reaper became available, I immediately hard switched to that, and that was my main for quite a while. Lately, I've been doing a lot as Dancer, and that seems to be my go-to class for the most part now, although I still hop back to Reaper every now and then.
Okay.
I can't do tank classes, I can't do healing classes. They both give me way too much anxiety, and I'm already a decent enough healer as a Dancer.
I hard prefer tanking classes. I am just comfortable having that cushion defense and just taking all the attention. I haven't had any issues being tank yet. I actually, when I do certain missions as DPS, there are moments where I'm like, God, I wish I had my tank powers again. I just have not had the power of a tank of a DPS affect me in such a way that I can see the advantages of it being over a tank. I do want to try in the future at least get up to 30, get over the guild quests for Bard, and maybe look at both Red Mage and Samurai.
Mm-hmm.
Well, since I know both of those start off at 50. And then I also plan, when it becomes available, Dark Knight, and I'm going to look into seeing how I like healing in general, but I'm just going to pick White Mage for that. Even though Heart of the Cards compels me to go Astrologian.
I mean, we're both Yu-Gi-Oh! Nerds as well, so why wouldn't you want to draw cards? But then again, Astrologian is in high need of a rework, so might want to hold off on that until they actually do that.
Yeah, I'm in no rush. It's just more of a matter of I've been more comfortable tanking than at healing, and at least the way that... Oh, this is probably something we should both mention. We're both controller players.
Yes, I play on the PS5. Leo plays on his PC, but we both play with a PS5 controller.
So I'm used to using the controller setup for my character. I don't even want to know how people do keyboard setups. I have been exposed to MMOs in the past. That kind of thing has always turned me off. I tried playing Path of Exile, that MMO, and so to me, I got a couple levels to do it, but I dropped off after a while, so I at least have some experience in MMOs, but they turned me off for the most part, and this is one that I actually found myself wanting to come back to, which is why we're here and why we're doing sort of this podcast.
Yeah. Again, most of this, the reason why we're doing this podcast is because I'm a fucking emotional vampire and I want to feed off your energies. I want to feed off your reactions to everything.
You got to draw that as an alt for your Hrothgar, being a Hrothgar vampire. Would you be a void scent at that point?
I think I got a glam for that regardless.
I wouldn't be surprised.
There's actually a demon outfit on the shop. That's where I got my horns for my Hrothgar. And it actually has black wings and everything. So
oh, there you go. Just put the whole thing up.
Yeah, I know.
I have played... So my main, like I said, my main before is tank. I enjoyed having the bulk and the defensive might of tank. I've been pretty comfortable and I feel pretty competent as a tank going through ARR. My monk is okay, but I feel like at least where I am right now, and it might just be a matter of just not having everything as optimized as I do with paladin, but I feel like monk is not as powerful as it should be.
Well, give it a few levels. Give it at least through the next expansion and see how it is.
Okay.
Again, a lot of the classes get more complex and more intricate the further you go through.
Okay.
Dancer is very basic up until level 70 when you learn a technical step.
And I know, and although I don't know too much about future classes, I do know samurai is a bit of a pigeonhole, and I know some people have some very strong feelings about red mages. Mm-hmm. But I still want to try one for the fashion, and the other because I'm a fucking weeb.
Fair enough. I actually did try Samurai for a little while. Just didn't click with me. I have been trying my hand at Summoner since they reworked it. You do not want to know what Summoner was like before they reworked it.
I have a friend who's tried to explain Summoner to me before they reworked it, but that's a whole other conversation altogether.
Yeah, it was basically like a 20-step combo. Mm-hmm. It was like, it was really bad. But anyway, now that you've gone through it, I guess the next question that I have on this list is your thoughts on each of the Scions of the Seventh Dawn. So I guess we'll start off with the main member, Minfilia Ward.
So, the Scions as a group in total are just your typical good aligned group to go ahead and have something to support the player character. Minfilia is alright as a leader, I guess. I never really found her to be charismatic or bold enough. I almost thought it was kind of weird that she was in the leadership role.
Fun fact, she's actually a minor class.
A minor class?
As in, she's a miner. As in, digging for gold miner.
Oh, okay.
She's not a combat class.
Okay, that is doubly weird. That explains probably a lot of why I think that, it doesn't make sense, but...
Wow. She's your generic white girl.
Yeah, I mean, when you phrase it like that, you're not being wrong. I think,
though, to be honest, there's an even whiter girl later on, like the whitest of the white. You'll find out in Stormblood.
I know this is an audio podcast, but I want to make sure that the audience can verbally understand the cringe that I'm giving you, the cringe expression I'm giving you right now.
Trust me, everyone knows who I'm talking about, and they're like going, "Oh yeah, white woman alert."
Okay. Yeah. But she's all right. She's inoffensive, but I do appreciate that she does take responsibility for the Scions when the Garleans take over. So I think that at least as a leader figure, I think she does at least a decent enough job. Not my favorite of the Scions so far.
Okay, next off is Thancred.
Okay, I would prefer to save Thancred for last because I do have some very strong notes on him, and I think that would be more appropriate. But let's come back to Thancred.
Okay, then let's go with the inseparable duo of Ida and Papalimo.
Okay, so those two are definitely a comedy act, and they know it, or at least ARR makes it known. I think they work very well together. They play off of each other very nicely. Papalimo is probably my second favorite Lalafell out of the entire base game, and I think you know who the first one is. Mm-hmm. But I think he's very good. He comes off as very competent. I really enjoy his character. Ida is also really nice. My only complaint with Ida is that I think when you're trying to establish a group of characters to grow attachments to them, my biggest thing is that you should be able to see everyone's faces, and Ida's mask kind of works against her. I would like to see
what's behind the mask.
What's behind the mask? Because I think Urian J also has the same mask, doesn't he?
He's wearing a hood and goggles at the same time.
He's wearing a hood and goggles, which again gives that same masked impression. So it kind of
it gives the impression they're both hiding something.
They're both hiding something. They're both related because they're both doing it. And in reality, I think just the fashion should contrast them differently. I would assume, and this is me conjecturing because I know certain things, certain outfit changes, I would assume that if Ida gets a similar change in the future, This should solve my problem, but I do not know. I am conjecturing. You do not need to confirm for me.
I am not going to say anything because this is spoilers.
Okay. So I do like Ida's character. I think she gets some nice cheeky bits near the end during Endgame for ARR. I just think they could have improved with her more, but Ida is probably second best Lalafell.
Papa Limo is actually...
Or Papa Limo's second best Lalafell.
Yeah. Papa Limo is Archon Louisoix's best student.
Which I could see that being a thing.
Yeah. I think he's actually like 40 or something.
Wow, that's impressive.
Then again, Lalafells don't really age the same way.
Lalafells are your halflings in Final Fantasy XIV, so I can see that same... He's still young by his own people's standards.
Pretty much. All right, next off, everyone's favorite cat girl, Y'shtola.
And it's pretty obvious why she's everyone's favorite, and she's my favorite as well for various reasons. We get a good chunk of the game with her, I think, when you're progressing through Costa del Sol.
If you start off in Limsa, Y'shtola is the one you actually meet up with and do the first 10 level story with.
Okay.
If you're in Ul'dah, you get Thancred, and if you're in Gridania, you get Ida and Papa Limo.
Okay, I imagine that your attachment with them would then vary based on what city-state you started.
Yeah, I'm actually more familiar with Ida and Papa Limo because of what I did.
Mm-hmm.
But I've actually roughly seen what everyone's been doing in either one.
Okay. As far as my other impressions of Y'shtola, this is, I think, where they put most of the time and attention to in terms of giving their characters personality. And pardon the pun, but Y'shtola is the cattiest of them all. She has great one-liners. She definitely comes off as more competent, a little sassy, but I think that's appropriate for her character. But overall, she's kind and wants the best for her and her friends. And honestly, she's probably a great character overall.
Yeah. And I forgot to put this on the list, but what are your thoughts on Urianger at the moment?
I don't really have too many because he didn't do much. And that was part of my reason why I asked you specific questions about what happens to him in the future, which I am surprised when you gave me that answer. I am not answering the question for the podcast purposes because I'm playing along with the shtick.
Yeah.
But I will say that I'm looking forward to seeing what happens to him in the future.
Yes, you're looking for the outfit change, but again, that's not going to happen until Shadowbringers for the most
part. You didn't put her on here, but I did hint at Papa Limo being my second favorite Lalafell, so I obviously have to put the first favorite Lalafell as well.
Oh, Tataru.
Tataru. She is fucking adorable.
Yeah.
And not in the traditional sense in which you would assume I use the phrase fucking adorable. She's just adorable outright.
Yes.
I have seen the meme with her. I know the powers that be for Tataru to do her thing, and money makes the world go round.
Do not underestimate the coin keeper of the Scions of the Seventh Dawn.
Yes. Okay, and so now we come back, and now we talk to Thancred, because Thancred, as sort of previously discussed, Thancred was the member of the Seventh Scions who I interacted with.
Yes.
And for purposes of ARR, it's very interesting knowing how he ends up being possessed by
La Habrea,
and how his interactions with the player at the start lead into the events of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, that is very interesting how that works out.
Part of me actually wonders, when was it that he was possessed by La Habrea?
You could argue that he was possessed by La Habrea beforehand, because that was the entire reason he was trying to go after the Sultana. Or you could say that it occurred sometime in between, after the level 10 quest line. You were interacting with the true Thancred, and then after the level 10 quest line, he goes out and tries to find Crystal of Darkness, gets possessed, and then he becomes a double agent at that point onward.
Yes.
So, honestly, I kind of saw it coming about midway through the quest line. And, of course, that explains why he's not there when the raid occurs. He's the only other person who should have died or should have been captured, which, again, I think that's a decent amount of foreshadowing. I'm very impressed with the way that they dragged it out in terms of the reveal and the rescue for him. I think that was very well placed. I understand that his boss fight, as it were, was not in the original. They retrofitted that in.
Yes, because I recently watched Leo play through the whole of Praetorium and the final battle with La Habrea. I played it before the whole rework, where it was an 8-man team going through all the Praetorium, going through the Iron Giant, going through Nero, going through Gaius, going through the Ultimate Weapon, and going through La Habrea, all in about 50 fucking minutes. And fuck me sideways, that fight was a joke. Because 8 people with endgame gear pretty much just mollywopped Thancred Brea.
Right. And then, of course, later on, I think it is... what is his name? Rei'tan?
No. I'm Rei'tan.
The guy with the shield guns.
Oh, Rydian.
When you have Rydian and when you
Rydia, Livia, Nero, and Gaius.
Well, Rydian is a solo instance.
Yes.
And then so is Thancred. So they made adjustments or Thancred La Habrea, but they made adjustments so that way it was more balanced and at least thematically appropriate for you to have a difficult encounter. Otherwise, because even when it was a 4-person raid, Lydia and Nero were both jokes.
Yeah.
So I think even then, like, adjustments were made to try and not make it as easy. But obviously, I think that they still kind of just had to say, look, we got to just leave it be because there's going to be harder shit in the future.
Yeah, they reworked a lot of the endgame of ARR because not only was Rydian originally an 8-man fight, that was a fucking joke that got wiped out before newbies even finished watching the cutscenes.
Right.
There was also Livia's entire fight where the entire Castrum Meridianum was actually much longer to go through. It was an 8-man team, and you were actually going with Sid to knock down multiple energy posts that were creating the barricade for the Praetorium. Livia was a fight where they were on their white mount, and you had to throw bombs at her with mortars, and were being constantly attacked by soldiers, and you had to stop the soldiers and then fire on the mortar, and then you could fight Livia proper.
See, I had done missions where you had the mortar launching mechanic, or the throwable item mechanic, and I always wondered, I wonder if this is ever going to show up in a boss fight. And so that kind of, I guess, answered my question. It was at one point, but it was reworked out.
Yes, it was. And again, like I said, the Praetorium got cut into pieces where there was the main part of the Praetorium, then they cut out the Ultimate Weapon to be a 4-man
dungeon. Four-man raid.
4-man raid, and then La Habrea as the solo instance.
So, my only other thought about Thancred going forward is that we've done the possessed betrayer arc for Thancred. Now the question is where his story is going to go, because there's a lot of potential there, and so I'm curious to see, because I know one of the few things I do know is that the writing only improves from this point onward.
Oh, yes.
So I'm curious to see what they do with Thancred's storyline from here.
All right. Now it's time to talk about the twins, Alphanod and Alisaie.
Well, really, we're only talking about one twin, which is Alphanod.
Yeah.
Because, as you told me, Alisaie doesn't really play a role in ARR.
Not until later on. Like, she shows up in some cutscenes, and she plays a major role in the Coils of Bahamut, which I am still wondering if I should just make you go through it or just make you watch the cutscenes.
Yeah. So I remember watching the Rand Company cutscenes, and basically you finishing that little episode before Alisaie storms off and basically says, "I'll see you around in the next patch, fucker."
Yeah.
Because that's basically the impression that I got from her. Alphino, as far as a character goes, is alright. I know he has bigger plot relevancy later on. I think right now he's still kind of like the cheerleader of the group, which is weird because that's what like Minfilia should be. But like
he's also a grade A Redditor at this point.
Yeah, like I don't know like what his role is really, other than because I only know before I got into the game really properly. I only know him for one thing, which is actually really just a line based off of a meme, which is, we are Alphino and his Warriors of Light.
Yes.
That's the only thing I fucking... Or Alphino and the Seven Signs. So, I don't know how the fuck he sort of becomes, like, why he gets headlining in future series. So, aside from there being... He is the descendant of Louis Soix.
Yeah, he is Louis... Alphino and Alize are Louis Soix's grandchildren.
And if you don't know who Louis Soix is, he is the old man smiling before everyone gets fucking nuked in the clip that everyone sees about Final Fantasy 1.0.
Yes.
Or 14 1.0.
Yeah.
So, I get that he has great things ahead of him. I'm not convinced he's there yet.
I'm going to let you know right now, in the patch quest leading up to Heaven's Ward, he is only going to become more and more and more insufferable.
And this is before the new voice actors come in?
Yes.
Okay. I was told by several other friends, you have now hit the slog of the story. Once you clear ARR post-patch, then you're good.
Yeah. I will let you know now they have cut out a lot of unnecessary quests since when I did it, and even beforehand, because there was even more quests before I joined. So they've done a lot of fat trimming. Mm-hmm. But there's still a lot to go through for the patch quests. You still have to do the Crystal Tower raid before you can start Heaven's Ward. And I'd really like you to do the Manderville quest line before.
Yeah, no, everyone's telling me, that's the... There are three things that were basically convincing me to play this game. Number one was the fucking soundtrack, because A Long Fall is a banger.
Yeah.
Number two is the Manderville storyline, which I have only seen out-of-context clips of.
Yes.
And I still... and having met the man in one of the ARR stories, I still have questions. Mm-hmm. And then the third thing is the burgeoning e-business that is Final Fantasy XIV on Twitter.
Yes.
Because, boy howdy, are people thirsty.
Yeah, that's pretty true. Okay, so we've covered the Scions for the most part. I don't think we've missed anyone there. So I guess we should talk about some of the side characters, starting off with Sid and his associates Biggs and Wedge.
So, there always has to be a Sid. And
there always has to be a fucking Sid.
And I want to say, at least of the incarnations of Sid, I think this is one of the better ones. He reminds me a lot of the Sid from 12 in the sense that it is a Sid sort of on the fence of good and evil, except this Sid obviously made a decision rather than pensively straddling the line back and forth.
Yeah.
I like what they did, at least with Sid's introduction and the sort of the mystique around him before he's met and all the things going forward with him. There is one very annoying thread, which you and I have seen, in which, in a cutscene, Sid recovers his memories, and it basically boils down to the Warrior of Light, your character, giving Sid his iconic goggles, which hide a secret, which is his Garlean heritage, and what that exactly means.
Yeah.
And I asked you, does that ever come back, or we get an explanation?
I've never seen an explanation for it. I don't think I've even remotely seen fan theories about it. And I watch a lot of people who dig into the deep lore of some of the dungeons and stuff. I watch YouTubers like the Eorzean Archive and the Synodic Scribe, which both do Final Fantasy lore, and they've never once brought up anything about Sid's encounter with the Warrior of Light.
I would love to see that, even if it's just like a April Fool's Day joke of where they just, fuck it, we're gonna crack ship this thing.
Yeah.
But yeah. I think that's like my biggest thing, is that they make a big deal out of Sid being Garlean, and obviously that plays into the Praetorian a lot.
Yeah, because Sid's father was actually the one behind the Meteor Project, which is the project that brought down Dalamud,
which led to the calamity in the end of ARR.
Before ARR,
or before Realm Reborn, it led to the calamity in 1.0.
Right.
So obviously they are playing up the fact that Sid's Garlean ancestry is going to have some relevance later. Obviously, he's still got a lot more work to do for everyone. Biggs and Wedge serve as your comic introduction, and they are Sid's lackeys. Obviously, they go for some slapstick with the fact that Biggs is a Rogadin and Wedge is a Lalafell. I think probably one of the most chuckle-worthy moments for me was when Wedge first meets Tataru, and he immediately goes head over heels and literally does the idiot's charge for valor.
Yeah.
To try and save her. And if you talk with him the entire time, it's like, I hope she notices me, I hope she notices me, I hope she notices me. And Tataru is like, thank you for saving us! And completely, like, no-selling Wedge's contributions at all.
Yeah, and you're going to be later on, you are literally going, for fuck's sake, man, just tell her!
Right. No, I imagine we're doing that. And I think I told you at one point, I did a in-character joke where Roaring goes up to Wedge and says, look, just go ahead and tell her, save us all the fucking trouble. And then Wedge smugly responds, I'll do it if you tell Y'shtola first, and says, we will never have this conversation again, you little shit.
Okay, I forgot about that.
Yes, so if you can't tell, I do enjoy like making my own headcanon of characters interacting and stuff, and I think that's at least part of the charm. That in earlier quest lines where you were faffing about or shit isn't really pertaining to the world is about to end or the world is about to be invaded, I am able to sort of enjoy myself in that aspect. And there's a lot of fleshing out in some of the main scenario where that happens. There's an entire fucking side quest, or not entire fucking side quest, but there's an entire section of the main scenario where basically it says, you need to go talk to this this disbanded guild who took on Titan and basically understand what you need to do in order to be Titan. And you meet the former guild head, and he says, fine, I'll help you, but you have to do all this fetch quest bullshit first.
Yeah.
And it literally is fetch quest bullshit, because at the end of it, all they were doing was basically preparing a big meal to send you off to. But at the same time, they were all testing you and making sure, like, you're not some fucking poser that's just going to go get himself killed. You're the real deal. But that is a fucking slog of a series of quests that I was like, good lord, how long am I going to have to go do this?
Fun fact, that Lalafell member of the group is actually blind, if I recall right.
Yes, they are. They are Vintier. And I enjoyed, like, their part of the quest line, because there's basically, they were trying to persuade... You needed a certain vintage of wine for the party.
Right.
But that vintage is only held in the hands of a particularly smug Rogadin, who I swear has a posh French accent when I played through that questline on my own.
I'm pretty sure the only Rogadin I know who has a posh French accent is Rondelin Rose, the leader of the Weavers Guild.
Wow. He could have it. He has it too, but this guy was equally uppity. But the point is that you had to go ahead and help the blind Lalafell Veneator basically recover an thought to be lost strain of wine, which could only be produced from a certain plant. And there's a whole bunch of shenanigans that go on. But eventually it leads to you getting the wine that you need. And it's a really surprisingly heartfelt mini-sode, even though for half of it I was thinking, for fuck's sake, why am I collecting wine when we're supposed to be stopping the end of the world earthquake going on here?
I know, we're literally trying to stop the embodiment of a fucking mountain.
And instead we're playing beach episode shenanigans.
I know, it's fucking weird. I believe there were used in the post ARR stuff, I believe there was a series of side quests you had to do for Tataru that was really long and arbitrary and went on too fucking long, but I think they cut that back.
Okay. Oh, so where was I going with this? Biggs and Wedge are hilarious. That's where we're going with this. And so I know, because of some comments I've seen, they get their day in the sun as far as being, like, heroes and helping out. But I think that I'm enjoying them as the comic relief they are for right now.
Alright. Okay, so the next characters on the NPC list is actually the Garleans themselves. Starting off with Rei'tan, who is actually a Rogadin, and I did not realize that was the case until recently.
I can see that, considering his frame is much bulkier compared to the rest of them. I honestly enjoyed his character the most. He was the one where I was not surprised. We're like, yeah, you're having a phase 2. Come on, let's do it. I was surprised when they pulled the phase 3, though. So I will give them kudos for that. Like, I figured, okay, everyone's going to have a phase 2. That doesn't surprise me. When he pulled out the phase 3, I'm like, okay, you cheeky motherfucker. You don't get to pull that shit again.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed his fight. I understand why they reworked his fight, because I only played it as a solo instance when I believe you said it was originally an 8-man raid.
Yes.
And of course, as an 8-man raid, that would have been horrible, because you would have everyone else would have finished the fight by the time a new player finished the cutscene.
Yes.
So, like, I completely
understand.
understand.
Yeah, because if I recall right, back in those days, you weren't held in place. You were held in place to watch the cutscene,
but not everyone else.
Not everyone else.
So
they've fixed that nowadays.
Somewhat, because I think there was still some instances in which I was watching a cutscene for some of the early dungeons, and they would be halfway through the fight.
Yeah,
actually, no. It was in the second phase. They would do on the initial one. Yes, everyone starts off the same. But when you have a phase 2 cutscene, I was watching the full extent of that one. I think it was like for the first dungeon, the one where you have the giant spider.
The 1,000 Miles of Totorock.
1,000 Miles of Totorock, and I was watching the full cutscene so I could get context. And by the time that the cutscene cuts midway, because the party actually finished the second phase, and it cut straight to cutscene, I'm like, okay.
Yeah, at that point, you might as well just go to a website and just watch the cutscene.
Well, I ended up playing it again and actually skipped the cutscene so I could actually fight the second phase proper. But I was doubling between Paladin and Monk at that point, so it was fine.
Yeah. All right. Next is Livia, who I think got a lot of context about her cut out recently.
Really? Because I basically got everything I needed to know about her being a simpering simpette.
Yeah, for Gaius. Yeah, she is incredibly obsessed with Gaius. You actually learn a bit more about her in Heavensward through a different character.
Okay. I will say, though, contrary to the normal trope that normally happens with sort of the stoic evil villain and his simpering female interest, I am kind of surprised at least he seemingly reciprocates back. I remember as they're about to do, I think it's like maybe 1 or 2 steps before the Praetorian, there's a point at which he's basically saying, everyone get ready. And then he turns to Livia and he says, my bedroom, 1 hour. And all I said is, the man is a fucking boss.
I mean, I don't think he literally said my bedroom 1 hour.
No, he said my quarters, 1 hour.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I know that's not what the intention was, but that's the way I read it, and I'm going to go with that.
I mean, you might as well, for the most part. But, yeah, Livia, I believe, got a bit of context about her cut out. I'm not sure what it was, because I've seen so many times the scene in Castra Meridianum that I've actually forgotten most of her storyline, for the most part. But, she's a good fight.
She was okay. I think I enjoyed her a bit more than I did Nero. But both of them, as I said before, both Nero and Livia were, because those were 4-man, those went by incredibly quickly. And I think Nero only had a little bit of trouble just because of the positioning.
Yeah, Nero's thing is that he has an electrified field in the outside. He will either force you to stack, or he will cause a hand to go for one of the enemies, and then he will move to one side of the field and do a massive sweep.
Right.
That's pretty much his entire gimmick.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that much. Nero gets a bit more interesting. I will say this right now. He shows up in the Crystal Tower quest line.
Okay.
So he gets a bit more interesting. He is, as I affectionately call, Cid's boyfriend.
Yeah, no, he has very much the penis envy for Cid. In both a contextual matter and a possible literal manner, given the way that they communicate with each other.
Oh yeah, literally sometimes I see them interact and I'm like, you two just go fuck already?
I believe that was at the point in which I said to you, Final Fantasy is probably the thing most likely to make you question your sexuality.
Yeah, pretty much, because I'm pretty damn sure none of the Scions are straight.
Yes, you said none. They are at minimum bi.
At minimum bi, not 100% straight.
Well, yeah, no, not a single one of them. Y'shtola absolutely prefers women to men.
Orion J is a fucking man-whore.
Orion J is a man-whore.
Who I am pretty sure is betting Thancred.
The only one the closest one to straight, and he's not really a member of the Scions, is Wedge. and that's just more of the fact that he can't get over fucking Tataru.
Pretty much.
And that one actually is taken in context.
Yeah. All right. Now we kind of brushed over Nero, but we got the point across.
I think we did. Yeah. So,
and then finally, the big bad of ARR and who's on the fucking cover art, Gaius Van Baelsar.
Gaius Van Baelsar fits the role well. I think as far as and I kind of want to just put my thoughts on the Garleans as a whole in here. I think the Garleans as a beginning antagonist are novel enough. It's interesting for them to put the Primals, who are sort of seen as the end-all be-all bosses in almost all Final Fantasy games, to tools that are later used by the humans. I think that fits their narrative well, in that they're basically a humanist movement, machine and progression over traditionalism and mysticism.
Yeah, here's the thing about Garleans. They cannot use magic at all.
Right.
They don't have magic, but in exchange, they have superhuman strength. They are literally
X-Men.
They are literally X-Men.
They're literally mutants. And I can see that being that gimmick. I would say my only complaint is that I can see kind of why they needed to then partner with the Asians to get anything done with them and to sort of make the machinations with the Ultima Weapon work.
Yeah.
I think my biggest complaint is that for the longest, I think it wasn't until after the Primals were finished did we really see, they wanted to awaken the Primals to go ahead and then power this Ultima Weapon. We really didn't get to see much of that beforehand, and it's kind of implied, and forget me if I'm wrong, either we're told or it's implied that they found the Ultima Weapon.
Yes, the Ultima Weapon is an Allegan relic of old.
Right.
That they repurposed, refabricated, and basically made to their own devices to steal the powers of Primals and use it for themselves, because they see Primals as the ultimate enemy of the world.
Right. They are the old gods that are holding the world back from progression.
They are the old gods holding the world back from progression, and they are also a problem in the fact that they endlessly consume ether and will cause the world to suffer.
Energy crisis, not to mention you have all the beast tribes using them for vengeance against the sentient races.
And causing others to be tempered into becoming servants of said god.
Which causes its own issues.
Yes.
So
because most people who end up being tempered, those who get tempered are often killed.
Well, because
there's no cure for tempering.
There's generally no cure for tempering. I think they actually, I played a mission for the Brotherhood of Ash where they actually untemper people.
Huh. I've never actually done the Beast Tribe quest for ARR, so I'm not familiar with it.
So it's a radiant mission that you do to get their allegiance, but there's one where you basically have to go out, fight tempered enemies, and once they're at low health, you use this item on them, and it untempers them.
Okay.
Or either it untempers them, or tempers them for the Brotherhood's sake, which is kind of neutral. I don't know. It's not. It's one of the things. One of the bad things I will admit I have a habit of is I just mash through anything that's not a main quest and not really understand the context of why the fuck we're doing this.
Guilty as charged. I've done the same.
Although sometimes that has come back to help me in certain cases, but I think we'll talk about those quests later.
Yeah.
As far as the Garleans are concerned, I think they're a good intro boss. I think they have a lot of good philosophical questions. I think it's a little pretentious, not as pretentious as it could be, but it's a little. Oh yes, we're so smart for making you question traditional Final Fantasy stereotypes.
Oh yes, we are the liberators. You are the savages.
Oh yes, I think at one point I said that we are turning. I think there's a line in which Gaius basically pulls a Kane from the Batman trilogy and says, "I call horseshit on that."
Yeah.
In which he basically pulls out, "We are giving power back to you, the people," and it's like, "No, you're not. You're going to take it for yourself and become a dictator, you asshole."
Yeah, not Kane, Bane.
Bane, but yes, you get the reference.
I mean, he's got the mask for it,
right? And I was saying you didn't even make a funny accent for it, so
yeah, fair enough.
But yeah, so that I think he's good enough. Yeah. I don't know. I'm guessing we might learn more about him in the future too.
I'm not going to say, but keep an eye out.
Okay.
But anyway, that's it for the Garleans. Now let's go ahead and talk about the city leaders. And let's go ahead and start with your hometown of Ul'dah with Nanamo, Ul'namo, and Rei'tan.
So the first thing that I have to say is that if one of my concerns about Lalafell hate is that you are just mad that they're in charge. Because, like, seriously, every time I go to a place of power, either the Lalafell are in charge or the Lalafell were in charge, and everyone took power from them because they were pissed about the Lalafell being in charge.
Yeah,
like it boggles me still that the Sultana, the Sultana's line are Lalafell, and that the head guy who basically turned Costa del Sol into basically his own personal resort is also a Lalafell.
Yeah, and not to mention that most of the monetarists
are
Lalafell on the board.
So it's like, you know, Lalafell and Lalafell violence.
Yeah.
Or do we call it a potato mash?
Oh god, I think I kicked the mic on that. I'm sorry. Sorry about that, everyone.
But no, like, I'm as far as, and you're going to have to forgive me because my memory is a little fuzzy, because when I did this, I started ARR during pandemic, but I fell out of it because my rig wasn't that powerful. And so it took me until, I want to say, like 12, almost a year, maybe a year and a half, before I picked ARR up seriously again. And then I started playing, like, I did a stint of 1 to 10.
Yeah.
And then a stint of like 10 to 20. And then I stopped for a long break. And then 20 to like 50 was where most of my recent playtime was.
Yeah, that was in the last couple of months.
So so when I encountered Nanamo, that was part of the beginning quest line where basically the Sultana had run off, and you had to go find her. And she kind of is the catalyst for you finding out that you have access to the Echo.
Yeah.
And so for the most part, I basically thought the same thing that One Punch Man thought when he ran into Tatsumaki. What is wrong with a small sassy child? And not realizing that I was literally disrespecting the Sultana, the one who I swore allegiance to technically as a paladin.
Yeah.
Which, that is irony of ironies.
Not to mention you're an immortal flame, so you're also in servitude of her as well.
Right, but that was a bit later. Still, Nanamo at least has some good speaking chops. She definitely forms a very cute comedic pair with Raubon, and I do enjoy just the way that she has the posh regalness of saying Raubon, and and I would say, like, I can definitely see that she carries herself in the regal way. I don't know if she becomes more relevant after this point. I definitely wouldn't object to seeing her more in cutscenes.
Okay. And Raubon is just the Bull of Alamigo who...
I would like to see more about his backstory about the Bull of Alamigo. I know that one of the things that kind of like irks me about 14, but also I understand why it's there, is that you have characters which have this prestige about them. Like, everyone says, oh, it's this person, they're the so-and-so of so-and-so. It's like, at least on a couple of them, it's like, okay, but I want to see that. And then they show it to me a couple of quests in later. I'm like, okay, I'm good. Raubon, I never got that with.
Yeah.
So, because the only time you really see Raubon, quote, at war, is the flashback they do during the Calamity. And that is the scene in which all three of the leaders are basically in their tents saying, what the fuck do we do because we're getting slaughtered? And then Mike Dalamud drops, and everyone's saying, Louis Swa!
Yeah.
And that's my basic impression of Raubon as a fighter. I have not had... Let me put it to you this way. In the Pugilist side quest, the entire side quest is about training up the guild master Hamon Holyfist back into fighting shape. He kind of fell off the wagon in terms of getting lazy with his technique, and that causes drama within the guild to basically him betting the guild in a death match. And when you train him up, by the time you hit the level 30 quest, and you have to go have this death match, you see a point at which Hamon fights against the main antagonist, who is basically cheating to win, because they always do. This is like a mini sports anime in a sense. And you see the moment where Hamon fully wakes up, and it does the anime thing of, it flashes back to him in his younger prime form, just to show you he's back.
Yeah.
And I almost squeed in my chair. That is how hyped I was for that moment, and that's basically what I want to see out of my famous NPCs, and I basically want Raubon to have that moment.
Okay, well, we'll see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Next up is Merlweb Blowfishwind.
That's probably a Swedish bag of fish in your mouth.
Ugh, I keep messing up that last name, but Merlweb.
Merlweb. Admiral Merlweb is probably...
Former member of the League of Lost Bastards.
I would say that probably she's, of the four, I would consider Raubon and Nanamo separate. Of the four, I think she's probably my favorite, regardless of my Grand Company alliances.
Yeah.
I fully respect her as her own character. She definitely has girl boss written all over her. I don't think that's a bad thing. She's definitely got the sort of Captain Mom qualities that definitely make people attracted to her. I think that's why you joined that guild.
Oh, hush.
She's a great character. I hope we get to see more of her. I got nothing else but good things to say.
All right, and now for the most boring of the group, Connie Senna.
Yeah, I wish I could see Connie Senna less, and she already didn't play a big role to begin with. She's like a big wet blanket compared to the other world leaders.
Yeah, if I recall right, when I first got introduced to Connie Senna, I had to wear a fucking weird wooden mask that blocked my face for the whole thing, and I was like, I can't even see what my character is reacting like.
Oh yeah, that was also kind of the interesting thing, because when you did Ul'dah and you met the Sultana, you just got earrings.
That would have been so much nicer, but I didn't want to be a tank, and I didn't like the thought of being a monk at the time, so...
Right.
But anyway...
Or a Black Mage.
Ugh. Fun fact, Black Mage is actually Yoshi P's favorite class.
That kind of scares me.
It's also the only class that's never gotten nerfed. I wonder why.
Conspiracy theorists conjecture.
Yes.
But, yeah, Connie Senna, littlest interactions with her aside from her Grand Champion speech, or Grand Company speech. I don't... you've told me some things basically explaining her race is a species that basically is good aligned, but in tune with the primals, so that they can kind of communicate or sense them.
They're not the primals, the elementals.
The elementals.
Yes. They're basically Hyur that are born with horns. They are in tune with the elements. They look young for most of their life. They live like upwards to 150 years, but they always look like they're in their teens and 20s. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, and if I recall right, Connie Senna is like only 20, 25.
But yeah, she has the emotional encouragement of wet toilet paper. She is very mushy, kind of just like there.
She's a figurehead in the most blandest possible way.
Yeah, I do not understand how people end up being in Twin Adders.
Me either, to be perfectly honest.
I guess they just want to embrace that forest life.
I guess.
But that's as much as I have as far as those characters go.
I'm trying to think of other characters. I guess I could quickly talk about the Beast Tribes. Which one of the Beast Tribes did you like the most?
Well,
there's the Amalja,
So, I have told you... I think you know the answer to this, but I'm going to go ahead and just pontificate how I got there, just so that way it's funnier. I saw the Amalja, and my first thought was, these are our step in for the Banga, because that's basically what I associate them as.
Yeah.
And then my second thought is, why is there not nearly enough art of them?
I actually know a friend that actually has an Amalja character.
I think I know who you're talking about. May they rest in peace.
Oh, no, not them. They're not dead.
Oh, not them. I was thinking of someone else then.
You're thinking of someone else. No. Mm-hmm. But regardless, the Amalja are pretty good.
The Amalja are good, and I say one because I like fire element in general. So anything fire elements is good with me. Second, I have done the Brotherhood of Ash, or some of the Brotherhood of Ash quests, which their general vibe is basically fuck primals, return to nomadism. Which I can generally vibe behind, and I think it's overall more fitting to my character, so I definitely wanted to learn more about them and get to know other characters within that.
Okay, and then next we have the Ixal.
The Ixal?
The Birdmen.
Right, the Ixal I'm kind of on the fence about, because we've discussed, you've shown me like what that progression looks like, But as far as like the bird people in general, they're definitely no Rito. I would definitely say they're probably my second least favorite of the beast tribes.
All right. Next up, we have the Sahagin.
The Sahagin are probably my least favorite, mainly because we know diddly squat about them.
Well, wait for a while. Next, we have the Kobolds.
The Kobolds are cheeky and interesting.
They also have a very good use of the thesaurus.
Yes. I'm surprised how well read they are for being literal mud dwellers. And I'm also surprised that by comparison to like other iterations, they are more like elephant mice.
Yeah.
Which I find interesting because then you compare them with Titan, who is, Titan.
Yeah.
So I find it very interesting that in comparison to like Ifrit and the Amalja being big and bulky, the Ixal being lithe and feathery like Garuda, you have the Sahagin, who are fish-like and
they have
wet.
Leviathan.
They have Leviathan. And so just the comparison between the meek Kobold and the giant Titan, I think is just the most fitting thematically.
Mm-hmm. Okay, those are...
And the Sylphs are the last one.
The Sylphs are the last one, yeah. The weird plant-like fairies.
But you get a lot more interaction with them than comparison to... Because the Sahagin are literally one quest.
Yeah.
It's like one of your first dungeons. And that's it for them.
Yeah.
You don't really see them outside of maybe one or two overworld areas. So I don't think you get too much exposure to them.
Yeah.
But the Sylphs, you get much more interaction with them. I would have enjoyed seeing tempered Sylphs a bit more because for the most part, the Sylphs you encounter are friendly.
Yeah.
Or friendly or neutral aligned because you're trying to convince them to help you out.
Yeah, the evil Sylphs are the purple ones.
The tempered ones, yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's also, I do also appreciate the fact that they say, you can go over there right now, but they're gonna kill you.
Yeah.
So I appreciate sort of like look, this is an MMO. You don't want to just wander aimlessly. You're going to get yourself killed.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that warning like fairly early on, especially because there are points where if you try to do side quests first before doing story progression, you can actually end up in areas where you can get yourself killed very easily.
Oh, yeah.
And I have skirted that line multiple times.
I think I've helped you avoid some spots.
Yes, you had, but that was, I think, because you were trying to get me to do leave quests for quick level ups, which I couldn't get because I wasn't near the mandatory level yet.
Yeah, which fucking hell.
Oh well. But still, I think I think at least as far as most of them are fleshed out, the Sahagin are probably the odd one out. That's probably the only one that could possibly change or impress me otherwise.
Okay, and we've kind of over the course of this podcast talked about some quests and side things that you've enjoyed. One thing that I know probably piqued your interest is the Gold Saucer. What are your thoughts on the Manderville Gold Saucer?
So, my initial thought was, oh joy, it's going to be the Pokemon Casino all over again. It's going to be the arcade corner all over again. But no, the Manderville Golden Saucer is actually fair, question mark?
Yeah.
So, my thoughts were initially like, okay, this is where you basically sink your time when you're done playing the game, and you basically give money hand over fist. But no, it works you start out with it works on its own monetary system. Yes, you can buy in with Gil, but it's only to a certain amount, and it's only to start you off.
Yeah.
And so what you're supposed to do is you do it as part of your weekly routine. You pop in, you do some chocobo races,
you do some cactpots.
You do some cactpots. You do your big weekly cactpot. You go wait until it's 8 o'clock your local time. Go celebrate like it's the end of the new year while everyone's waiting for the lottery numbers to get announced.
Yeah.
And then you spam the fucking tablet hoping that you get a match.
Yes.
Now, the one thing that kind of annoys me is the fact that it's very immersive, that they have their own numbering system, and it's very cute, but it means that I don't know what the fuck I'm looking at.
Yeah.
So I always don't know whether I've won or I bust until I actually go turn it in with the bunny girls.
Yeah. Pretty much what I do is when I do the cactpot, I basically go, okay, I'm just hitting the random number button a couple of times, hit yes, do it again, random button a few times, hit yes, random button, hit yes.
As someone who has actually studied statistics on lottery, that is actually the best possible thing you can do.
Yeah.
I think I told you I got at one point 2 numbers on the...
Yeah, I've gotten 2 numbers before as well.
Right. I don't think we've ever gotten more than that. And I've gotten the big jackpot on the mini Cactuar tickets, which you can do 3 times per day.
I've gotten that one 3 times in a row.
Nice.
Yeah.
Triple Triad is fun. But
exactly like 8.
Exactly like 8. But man, they give you harder on the fucking card draws than fucking Master Duel.
Yeah. Also, some cards you can only get by doing raids.
Yeah, I would not be surprised. But like, I tried keeping... the early encounters with it are competitive enough that, like, yeah, you can go ahead and collect a couple of card packs here and there and build a competent deck. But if you ever want to do more than that and do some of the NPCs you just encounter on the street, some of them are just fucking mean.
Also, fun fact, some of the Triple Triad cards have lore.
I would not be surprised, but...
Yeah.
When my opponents consistently have cards with 7, 8, 9 consistently more than I do, at that point I just said, no, this is not for me. I'm not going to be investing myself into this.
Well, if you're really crazy, there's always Mahjong.
Yeah, I tried learning Mahjong from the beginner table. I just said no. So basically, I'm sticking with Chocobo Racing, which I'm fairly decent at. I also finally, because you never did it, but I found out for you what Lords of Vermilion is.
Yeah.
It's basically Miniature League.
Yeah, it's Lords of Verminion.
It's Lords of Verminion, but it's basically Miniature League. You take your minion characters and you use them to play League of Legends style MOBA takeover towers. And so if you're not into that, then it's going to be a complete turnoff for you. So I'm basically down for Chocobo races, your live events,
yeah,
and then occasionally I'll do the mini games like the lumber and the mining.
Yeah,
which the original mini games you would play for mining and logging actually appear. Those mini games in the Golden Saucer are the original logging and mining mini games. So that's why they look that way.
Neat. Let's see. I think the one that I really enjoy doing is the one with Yojimbo.
Yes, the Yojimbo's Dodge and Slice. I did one recently where it was Ulthus or Ulthos.
Yeah, Ultros.
Ultros, and it was very similar, and I had much better luck with that one.
Wait, it's not Ultros, it's Typhon.
Typhon, there you go.
Yeah, Typhon, where they just blast against the ground and
it sneezes.
Yeah,
you get sneezed off stage. I've done that one. I've also done the one that is probably the one I've done the most, and the one that I'm most annoyed by is the platforming.
God, I hate the platforming. I've never gotten it right.
I have beaten it twice out of like the 5 or 6 attempts, and then of course I like the railgun sections.
The railgun's pretty good. I hear that you can actually be more precise with the platforming if you're on keyboard and mouse.
Yes, you can. It's not easy. There is a way you can still do it on controller, but it basically means doing your best George of the Jungle impression and slamming into the tree all the time.
Right.
Besides that, everyone is you have been harping on me about Manderville.
Yeah.
And meeting his level of craziness, which is weird because the first quest you encounter with him is, I think, mid-30s, 35s, in which you basically rehab him.
Oh yeah, he believes he's a zombie.
So, I'm curious to see how...
Oh, it gets weirder, trust me.
I've seen the clips. I know I am not prepared.
No, you are not prepared, but you might want to do them if you, after a stressful day, turn on Final Fantasy 14 and go through the Manderville quest line and just laugh your ass off.
Okay. Other quests that were interesting, Lord of the Dance.
Lord of the Dance?
Lord of the Dance is a whole... I think I've only encountered him maybe 2 or 3 times, but that doofus is hilarious, especially because he basically thinks of you more than like a professional dancing girl from Ul'dah. So I kind of enjoyed that one. I really enjoy, as I said before, the Pugilist questline going up to level 30 because of that hype moment. Beyond that, I think probably my favorite quests were probably the entirety of Costa del Sol as sort of like a blanket statement.
Yeah, Costa del Sol is pretty cool. Okay, so now it's time to go for the boss rush. So we talk about all of the bosses for ARR and see what your thoughts on them were overall. So first off, the first one, Ifrit.
Ifrit, I think, is a pretty good standard introduction to what the primal fights are. Again, Ifrit was a way long time ago, but I do remember enough that I felt competent enough that I was able to do it. It sort of was my first feeling of, yeah, I can do this tanking thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, tanking's going to get a bit more complicated as you go through it more, but I think you'll probably get the hang of it. Mm-hmm. Next off is Titan.
So, Titan was probably a little bit harder for me. He does have the move where he drops off parts of the stage, and I unfortunately did get knocked off my first run through. But I did go back to do it to complete it without falling off, just to give it what for. I think that's the most interesting fight, and I know that they kind of put that one in later because of the shenanigans where Titan was foreverly delayed.
Yeah.
In terms of encountering him, he was hyped up, and then...
Yeah, he was supposed to be hyped up in the original...
ARR.
Not ARR, but
1.0. And they never got to him, and so him coming and actually being a thing in A Realm Reborn was a nice little reprieve.
Yes. And then Garuda.
I think Garuda, by that point, in terms of mechanics, is a little bit easier, a little bit on the easy side. I know the gimmick is basically watch out for the windstorm, which they hinted at in some of the earlier dungeons that you have to do, but it wasn't really that bad, and I'm not sure if whether it was that you were helping me with that one, or whether it was just a really well-designed team, but I didn't really feel like that one was too difficult. If it was a bit of a cakewalk to where I couldn't remember what the mechanics were, that kind of tells you what you need to know about the fight.
Yeah, Garuda kind of can be really stomped out pretty easily. Mm-hmm. And then finally, the Ultima Weapon.
So the Ultima Weapon is a nice little refresher of, hey, remember everything that you did before? Now master it.
Yeah.
And that's basically what they did. There was a lot of shtick with that fight also because of the crystal's interference to even the odds, as it were. And so it's as much spectacle as it is final boss. But I think it comes off in a pleasant way, not a grandizing way. It comes off as a grandizing way when you do the La Habrea fight. Yeah, because I showed you because you had not seen that rework. There's a particular sequence which, the moment I saw it, I'm like, the incident, the unavoidable death spot, and sure enough, after much grandstanding in which they play it off like it's a true duty fail, you get brought back in and you go ahead and you have the fight proper.
Yeah, literally. I'm so used to that bar being filled, and when it fills up, it's game over, you gotta start all over, that I was like, oh fuck. Mm-hmm. I forget that sometimes that they do that to fuck with you, because there are some bosses, I'm not going to say what, but I do remember a later boss that's a Shadowbringer's Trial, where it does fill up the bar and it does cause an effect. But it doesn't wipe the party.
And I will tell you that in this case, that I recognize it because it jumped from like 7 to 33% because I was taking out the balls too quickly. Yeah. So that's how I knew it was like, okay, I'm supposed to not do this. Yeah. But no, Ultima Weapon was probably the best fight that there was from that. In terms of the non-dungeon fights,
let's see, what the
non-main scenario or the primal fights, I think my favorite probably was I want to say Stone Vigil.
Stone Vigil is pretty good because the boss of that's a dragon.
Yeah, the wind dragons there were really fun, and I enjoyed the mechanics of fighting that one. I think the only dungeons of ARR I did not do were Dismail Darkhold, just because I unlocked it and never went back to actually try it out.
Word of advice, don't bother. Dismail Darkhold is a pain in the ass. Unless it is actually mandatory for, like, Moogle Tomestones, which is the intermittent patch tomestones. Don't bother with it. It is a horrible... And so is Ormvale.
I was going to say, and the other one that I never did was Ormvale, and I barely unlocked that one before coming.
I'm just going to tell you, the final boss of that is a Marlboro.
Okay.
Yeah. So, so I have a list of all the dungeons. You said that your favorite boss was Stone Vigil. What was your favorite dungeon to run through?
I think my favorite dungeon to run through was Hawk Manor.
Really?
I enjoyed Hawk Manor because I enjoy a story within a story, which is what Hawk Manor was to me. It's going through, finding all of the dark deeds that occurred in here, learning about the former owner who has become Void Sent, and then freeing them from their torment.
Okay.
I think that one was the one that I enjoyed the most. Cutter's Cry I enjoyed because I liked that mini delving through the dungeon, although I kind of also had... It was also my most annoyed dungeon because at one point when I was running it, I had internet disconnection issues, and so it didn't kick me out of the server, but what ended up happening is it didn't register my character's movements, and because it was working client side, I basically got a bunch of damage stacked up on me, and I died.
Oof.
And so I had to try to run back, except my party was still outside the boss room, and so because they were speedrunning it, all the enemies were still there, and I was a wee bit underpowered, because I think I was running Monk at the time.
Ooh.
So what ended up happening is I died on my way to the boss room again, and so the party had to full disengage, help my ass back to the boss room, and then the connection was stable enough that we did the boss fight proper.
Okay.
So that was probably the most laborsome dungeon run I've ever had, but I enjoyed that Chimera fight in particular. I think that the way that the enmity on that boss was really unique.
Yeah, because it would target a certain person and a ball would follow them and create an AoE effect.
Well, it basically alternated between dragon and goat heads. The dragon head basically did a long arc sweep, but it would do it at range. Whereas if the ram's head attacked, it was going to be right in front of it, so you had to disengage. Because I play frontliners, I have to choose whether or not to disengage or not.
Yeah, and then there's also a move, I forget which one it's called, but it's basically where you have to get on top of the Chimera, otherwise there's a raid-wide blast.
That's the dragon attack, because it basically alters between normal arcs, directly around it, and then outer ring away from it.
I actually recently went through that dungeon again during one of my roulettes, and I had a healer pull me. I was targeted for the ball attack, and they ended up pulling me back. They misclicked, and they did the tether, which pulls you.
They tethered you when the ring attack happened.
Yeah, and so the ball went off, and it killed the healer and one of the DPS, and it was just me and the tank. And we were stuck basically trying to kill the Chimera on our own.
Oof.
We managed to do it, but it was a pain.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah. But, yeah, I guess that's the major questions I have for you for the podcast. So my next question for you is, are you enjoying the game so far?
Yeah, I'm definitely enjoying the game now. There were some points at which, mechanically... and this is probably my fault for rushing through reading the descriptions and the tutorials, but there were some points where mechanically I didn't know how to do a certain thing. Usually it was something like, say, buying items from the shop.
Oops.
So where it's like, they really did not explain that to you really well, and they probably should have done at least one quest where you have to go do shopping. That probably would have been helpful. Also, I had some troubles later on because I kind of just didn't care about inventory management, to where I basically did whatever the fuck I wanted with mining supplies and trying out a bunch of different things, that eventually at one point I ended up having way too much stuff by level 30 to where I had to constantly start selling shit.
I have so many craftable materials and stuff. I just have my retainers hold on to all of them in case I need them.
Right,
but odds are they're all levels like 1 to 50, and right. I'm like, I don't need this shit. Why do I still have it?
Right, at least because I'm low level on my crafter classes, that's probably not an issue for me right now. And I don't think I'm going to really go into crafting as much as I would say a normal person would in Final Fantasy XIV ?
Yeah. here's my advice for you. If you want to learn how to make money in the game, do a gather quest.
Mm-hmm.
Be a gatherer. Because what I'm doing recently in Endgame is I've gotten the best Endgame miner gear. I've bought it, basically. I've put on as much material as I can so I get the highest perception to figure out what everything is. Because you need a certain level of perception to actually even see materials to harvest. And then I use this peripheral app on my computer that actually is tuned into the clock to the Orsian time clock, and it shows me when each of these nodes are active.
Right, because I do know that it works on a global system, and that's part of the effort when you're trying to gather on a larger scale. I do know that much.
Yeah, there are certain nodes that are always active. They're always active. You can go in like a triangle and get this, get this, and then repeat.
Right.
But there are certain nodes that are always they're only open for like 2 hours of the clock, and that 2 hours lasts about 30 minutes tops.
Right, because of the way the in-game and out-world time differ.
Yeah, and so I've been basically going through all those, getting the high-end 3-star materials, and then just selling them with my retainers.
Okay.
And that gets you a pretty penny. I'm up to 3. I was up to 5 million gil. I spent 5 million gil on a corgi minion.
I feel like that's the only time you could say I spent 5 million gil and it would be a minion of a corgi.
Yeah, because the only other way to get a corgi minion is to actually do savage raids. And I hate doing that shit.
Right.
I am not a savage player.
Yeah.
Okay, so next I would like to ask...
In terms of like other things that I'm enjoying, I would say that compared to other MMOs, the stories are more interesting. I find like certain NPCs that show up again are funny, or I enjoy learning more about them, learning about why they want to do certain things. Even when it comes down to certain things like, hey, do a kill quest or do a gather quest for me, and then you find out, there's a reason for it, or they have their own commentary about what's going on, and it interests me when they have their own little side sets like that. One point,
I mean, you are a GM. You like that sort of shit,
right? But when I do things for like D&D, the world building helps a lot with the immersion and it gets you more into the mindset of your character. At least I find, and it helps me think like I'm Roaring in the game and what Roaring would do or how he would interact.
Right. I basically made my character into the biggest lovable dumbass himbo possible. I mean, that's basically how... I'm a dumbass in real life. I may be smart, but I'm a dumbass. And so I basically put all my dumbass points into my character.
I feel like you play those... Like, knowing you knowing you having DM for you in past games, I feel like that is... You have a surprising strength in that you do not leverage enough.
Yeah, I remember... This is going off topic from Final Fantasy XIV, but I had this monk character in D&D. There was an airheaded, blonde bimbo of a monk who wore a bunny mask, and he...
I thought you were a priest.
Well, he was a cleric. He was a cleric.
Yes.
Sorry. But he was a complete ditz, never paying attention... Always got perfect rolls on the perception check. And
somehow managed to find the cure for the Black Plague in the universe.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yes.
Okay.
I remember that character very well. But, yes. I think that the main story was kind of phoned in, but I think it's appropriate for
given the backstory of ARR, they had to move mountains to get even a decent story out of this.
Right, but I think, and in spite of that, I think it still holds up fairly well. And I know that from what everyone's telling me, the worst of it is past, minus patch quests, and then it gets better.
Yeah. Like, literally, once Heaven's Wars starts, it's literally... The developers went like, okay, we've gotten through the worst of it, now we can make whatever the fuck we want using the stuff that we have here. Let's go fucking nuts.
Yes, and they did.
So, given ARR as it is, not counting patch quests, what score would you give it from 1 to 10?
I would say it's an 8.5. I would say that it's a very solid game. I think that there are some points that they could probably tutorialize a bit better. They do have I will say that the what is the starting guild, like the one that you have to do before you go into a dungeon crawl proper, the sprout thing.
Oh yeah, that thing.
Whatever, I forgot what it's called, but basically the tutorials that they do to teach you job roles is very well thought out. I think there's some lessons to be taught about like enemy prioritization and managing cooldowns. They could probably toss in there as a one or two extra lessons, just so that way you can say, look, you need to go ahead and watch your cooldowns. You can't just mash shit. And there are times in which you need to switch targets. Pay attention to this, because that's probably going to be helpful in terms of getting over what probably were the few deaths I had.
Okay.
Or fail states that I had.
All right, fair enough. And I haven't said anything about Heaven's... I think I've said something about Heaven's Ward.
Yes.
And that it's very, very kind of medieval, cathedral, Game of Thrones-y.
Yes.
What do you think is going to happen?
I think we're going to... I think what's going to happen is we're still... This ARR, in terms of the overall story... in the overall story of Final Fantasy XIV, is setting the stage. We are barely starting out. The whole conflict with the Garleans is not even going to be a blip in the stage of the world. And what we're seeing is the establishment of the Ascians as these are the real threats. These are the ones you really have to pay attention to. And what we're going to see going forward is what we basically only had to deal with one Ascian, which was La Habrea.
Yeah.
And I don't want to assume, but I'm going to assume, La Habrea is a chump compared to some of his other companions.
I mean, I've literally talked about certain Ascians already.
You probably have, but it's not registering to me at this time.
Yeah,
so
that's for the best. That's for the best.
But I will say, if you think La Habrea is some kind of tough shit, he is the Raditz of the Ascians.
I'm sorry. I'm just thinking about stuff that's happening in the current raids. It's just making me laugh at the moment.
I'm going to go ahead and say that I'm at least have some kind of I'm on the money there.
Kinda. But yeah, and that's all the questions I had for you. So thank you for joining me for this inaugural episode.
Of course.
And again, as I said at the beginning of this podcast, we're flying by the seat of our pants here. Leo literally has a full-time job of his own. He barely has time for 14 as it is.
I probably will be able to do it a little bit more. What's going to be holding me up from the next time we talk is me wanting to level probably Archer and maybe... I'm trying to remember the other one. Probably Archer and White Mage to having some kind of competent level, at least to get over the guild quests before I finish the patch quest. Yeah. That's probably going to be the biggest holdup for me, but if I were to actually power through, you could probably see, realistically, maybe 2-3 months for the next time we have another one of these.
Yeah. The next thing I'd like for us to cover is the Crystal Tower raid series and the Mandervels.
Yeah.
I'd like to do those two first before you finish patch 2.55.
Okay.
So
we'll see how long that takes, and if it takes longer than expected, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
that's all I can say. That's all I can really say about that one.
Again, this is not
a planned series. It's basically whenever I get around to it.
It's two friends shooting the shit, trying to enjoy each other's company as best as we can because we've both been busy with life.
Yes, so I think that's all we got for right now. Next time we go ahead and we talk about this, we should be talking about how swole we are.
Yeah, I mean, have you seen the cover art for this thing?
Until next time.
Alright, this has been Ray.
This has been Leo Force.
Signing out, and see you all in the next episode of the Aethercast.